that we had some sort of a cyber issue the night before we were set to publish the survey. And so QuickTap is still not sure what happened, but it seems that either the survey itself was hacked or that there was some mysterious bug in our survey and it shuffled all of the questions. And so Taylor had to program the spring survey not once but twice. And so a huge thank you to her for doing it and sticking with it and putting in very, very long hours for much longer than any of us anticipated. We also had some really weird and random things happen in Idaho and Charleston with the survey and then with tablets getting lost. And so thank you to Gina and Cindy for sticking it out and helping to resolve all of that as well. All right, I am going to turn things over to Catherine in just a second. And you're going to hear from three of us today. You're going to hear from Catherine, you're going to hear from Jen, the new research analyst on the project, and then I will pop back on toward the end. After each of those individual sections, there's going to be a question session that opens, and you'll be invited to share any interpretations you have, ask any clarifying questions. And so if those come up along the way, feel free to type them in the chat. Taylor's going to help monitor that, and then we will circle back to those during the question sessions. All right. Catherine, you are up.
Great, thanks, Karen. So this is a number that I think is familiar to many of you. So in year one, we collected data for more than 10,000 festival goers. And we have continued to analyze this data, and you'll see some of these updates today. And yeah, I think that's about it, and some new analyses with this set. But in year two, we collected data from over 11,000 festival goers, and we are excited to share some of those results with you all today. Next slide. Okay, so this slide is looking at how different festivals recruited people to their festival events. And you can see what we have up here are the results from 2015. So let's just go through the icons. So the top icon there with the group of people is word of mouth. So you can see that 21 festivals used word of mouth, and 30% of attendees reported that that was how they heard about the science festivals. As we just continue down the column there, you have school and work. Was also a really key factor in getting the word out about festivals. Keep going down, you have websites and also social media, radio, posters, flyers, banners, then television and, television and newspaper, and finally the last one, billboards. So you can see that there is definitely a trend, right, between the number of festivals that use these methods and the people that came or that reported that that was how they heard about the festivals. And this has been consistent, that word of mouth, at least I think so for many years, that word of mouth and school and work really bring a lot of people into the science festivals. Now we can look at the 2016 data, and we have somewhat similar numbers. But overall, you can see that the number of people who asked about each question, each category, decreased slightly, and that the success rate increased across the board. So let's see. Yeah, continue on. Thank you, Karen. So why are you here? Why do people come to science festival events? The order of responses, so this is the data from 2016, and the data here is similar to 2015 in that the order is the same. So in 2015, in response to this question, why are you coming to this festival? Why are you here? The highest response was that people said they like science. and the lowest one was Passing By, and it was the same order that you see here. The difference that we see from 2015 to 2016 is that the decrease, the stepping down in each category is more gradual this year than it was last year. Last year we saw a much larger step down from the top. The top three were really strong, so liking science, seemed interesting, supporting kids in science, and then there was a bigger drop-off to others wanted to come. It was free, the topic, interacting with scientists, and Passing By. So I think we can go on. Okay. So the data that we just shared, you've seen previously. So we've talked before about how people have heard about festivals and why they've attended festival events. We haven't shared demographic data across the 24 EvalFest science festivals. And you know, I know that for each of our individual festivals, the demographic data is really important and interesting and useful. And so we wanted to just look at it, what does it look like across the national level. So here we are. You can see that we have a greater percentage of women attending the festival. And you can see that about 2/3 of the survey sample are adults 25 years and older. This age data, the age data that you see here, comes from the first age question on the survey. And some science festivals ask kid questions, and so they have additional age data from the adults who then took over the iPad after the kid answered the questions. But the data here is not including that, that information. This is just the ages of the person who began taking each survey. And so some festivals don't ask kid questions, so that I would expect is skewing these numbers a little bit. But anyways, next slide. Okay, so this is looking at race and ethnicity across the 11,000 surveys that we had collected. And the orange is the EvalFest data, and then the gray background is from the U.S. Census. And so, I mean, just before we look at this, you know, we do want to say that this national data is probably not so relevant. It's much more relevant right at a local level where we can really, where each site can compare their data to the census for their region. But we still wanted to just put it out there so that we could look at that. And so if you are looking at it on a national level, you can see that we're underserving, or we have fewer whites in attendance, and as well as Hispanics, and we are basically at average, so similar. We match the U.S. Census for African Americans and Pacific Islanders, and then we are over-serving or have more Asians and American Indians attending the 24 EvalFest science festivals. Now here, Karen just put up the range across festivals, which is interesting, right? So at one festival, 36% of the surveys were completed by white people or Caucasian descent, and that went all the way up to 90%. So you can see here a real range, and it's not surprising. The EvalFest festivals are in very different communities. So we would expect that some would have a much higher or lower percentage of certain ethnicities. And I think we all can probably guess that the 55%, for example, of American Indians is the Arley celebration in Montana. You can also, I mean, it's what we know when we look at the individual festivals is, for example, that the large urban festivals, not surprisingly, have a higher number of Black and Latino attendees than smaller and more rural festivals. It's just what we would expect. So again, I just want to reiterate, I'm not sure how relevant this data is at the national level, but it really, what might be of interest is to look at data for festivals that are similar to yours in terms of the size of the festival and the region, whether it's rural or an urban area or so forth. And maybe reach out to festivals so that we can learn from each other about how to reach specific populations that we want to target. I think next slide. Yeah. So education level is not one of the core questions, but many festivals do ask this question. And you can see again we're using the orange bar is the EvalFest data and the gray bar is U.S. Census data. So of Science Festival attendees who completed this survey and were, what was it, Karen, I think 25 or 26 years of age?
25 and older.
25 and older. Basically all of them had a high school diploma. And then you can see as we go on, 14% had, of those 99% who had a high school diploma, 14% of them had gone on and received an associate's degree, 38% a bachelor's, and 36% a graduate degree. So the trend is clear here. The attendees as a whole are more educated than the U.S. population as a whole. And again, I think this is a place where local comparisons could be very useful. So looking at the census data for your region and seeing are you drawing a group of people that matches your local population in terms of education level. Next. So this is interesting to me. 30% of the attendees were attending the event without a child. I thought that was a little surprising, but I do remember that some festivals use the survey at non-expo events. So the survey may have been used at an adult-only or an adult-oriented event. I'd be curious to see this data pulled out just for the expo or Discovery Day events. And next. So of the 67% of adults who were attending a science festival event with a child, they were asked what age or what school level the children were. And obviously these numbers tally more than 67%, and that's not surprising. Many adults are there with more than one child. And you can see that, I mean, I think to me these numbers, they really resonate at least with the Bay Area Science Festival. When we think of our big family events, we have, you know, the majority of kids that we see there really are elementary aged. And then we do see significant numbers of preschoolers and middle schoolers and many fewer high schoolers. So, I think, yeah, so now we would like to open it up for questions or interpretations, something you think we should look at, and so forth.
You can type those in the chat if you want, or you can raise your hand and we can unmute your mic, whichever you prefer. And Taylor, it looks like Rachel may have put a question in the questions pane. Can you see that?
Yep, I answered.
Oh, you did? Okay.
All right, if there is nothing for now.
Gina just asked if this data will be available on the website.
Well, we are recording the presentation, and so we'll send that out to everybody so that you've got it that way. We probably have to talk about when and how to start posting this to the website. But everyone always has access to the webinars in the EvalFest archive, and so you'll have the slides that way. Gina, are you asking about the data or the slides or both? And hang on, let me see if I can unmute you so you can just actually talk. Okay, Gina, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so I think some of this data is really cool, and it'd be fun to, like you were talking about, to parse some of that data, because I'd like to really compare some of that data for our festival and some of the other festivals, and for writing grants and stuff like that, this kind of data could be really useful. So, I guess I would like the data as a whole rather than the slides, so that I could take that and then, parse out some of the questions that this data raises.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So we have some work to do to provide those data in a more user-friendly format than what they're in right now. But that's on the to-do list. And so that's something that Jen and I will be working on in the next couple of months. And so if you have a need for something and you haven't heard back from us, then definitely let us know. And we will do what we can to make sure we're helping you use the data in whatever way you want or need it, or that you have access to those. The other thing is that, the dashboard that we presented last week, I think, should give everybody a running start to think about some of these interactions. But the data that we're presenting here is more nuanced in some ways than the dashboard. So it might be fun too, though, if people are interested in pursuing that, to think about the 1-2 punch of looking at the dashboard first to see what trends are there, so that you know exactly what to target or what to ask for if you do need a database before we have one that we share with the entire community. All right, we're going to turn things over to Jen. Does anybody else have a question or a comment before we do that? All right, I don't see anybody new. Okay, Jen, I think you're up.
All right, thank you, Karen and Catherine. So now we're going to shift gears a little bit and look at some of the core questions from your surveys. And we compared those outcomes and rating data that we have from year 1 and year 2, and you see a pretty consistent picture. The core questions on this slide are the ones that use the consistent 5-point rating scale in both years, so for 2015 and 2016. But you'll remember that we had a couple of items that changed format from one year to the next. So the awareness item, for example, changed from 2015 to 2016. This one was previously a 5-point scale. The first year we decided to change it up a little bit, make it a yes-no item based on the Think Aloud work that was conducted. And you'll also remember that this particular item was only asked for individuals who were 18 and older. So if you take a look here, whoops,
Sorry.
If you take a look at the awareness system in daily life, you'll see from 2012 to 2015, the results were generally positively increasing overall. And then with the question change in 2016, there were still 9 out of 10 people said that they were more aware of STEM in their daily life after visiting the festival, so about 92% there. We also changed items about the awareness of types of jobs in STEM in 2016. So this one begins with a question that focuses on baseline knowledge of STEM careers. And you can see here that about 1/3 came to the festival with little or no knowledge about the many types of STEM jobs. And then about 2/3 came in with some or a lot of baseline knowledge. So this question was then followed up by an item that asks if they learned about new types of STEM jobs at the festival. And we had originally wanted to break this out so we could look at how responses to the first item related to those on the second. You can see here with these results, they're broken out by who provided each initial rating. We suspected that those with the least knowledge would have had the most to gain from coming to the festival, but it turns out that's not what the data had to say. Overall, it was the people that were clustered in the middle of the scale that seemed to gain the most from, based on the 2016 data. So here we're looking at scientist interactions. These are the data related to interacting with someone who works in science or engineering. And you'll remember that in 2015, we used the STEM professional language for these items. And then based on the Think Aloud work, we decided to make some changes in year 2. So now those items focus on interacting with someone who works with science or engineering. So you can see here that the gap between the people who think they have had this experience narrowed quite a bit from year 1 to year 2. In year 2, for example, folks believed that they had 83% of the folks believed they had had an interaction with a STEM professional, particularly a science or engineering professional in the past year, and then as a result of coming to the festival, 86% reported that they had had an interaction with someone who worked in science or engineering. But again, these results are cautionary. We don't know if this is the result of better wording on the survey in year 2, or if this really does reflect something fantastic going on in year 2 festival. So if I understand things correctly, and there was also a sort of natural experiment that occurred last year in relation to the discussion at labeling scientists that occurred at the annual meeting. Almost all of the fall festivals ended up labeling their scientists. So we thought it might make sense to see higher percentages of fall compared to spring attendees, noting that they interacted with someone who works with science or engineering. Now, these results are preliminary, but they are in the expected direction, and we do see that folks in the fall were reporting a higher percentage thought that they were interacted with a science or an engineering professional. So scientists and engineers still matter, yay. These are the updated results that replicate the findings that we've had every year. Respondents who reported interacting with a scientist or an engineer in the festival are in orange, other folks are in blue. And you'll see that those who interacted with a scientist or engineer at the festival reported higher ratings of their festival experiences across the board. And you'll note that each of those differences are statistically significant. So, yay, still mattering. All right, so the festivals that asked about how the festival is shaping respondents' perceptions of their state or region as making advances in STEM, or awareness of local STEM schools, museums, companies, research institutions, or organizations. The results suggest overall that festivals are definitely having a positive experience on respondents' perceptions of STEM and their communities. So here you'll see that the items pertaining to the region or state making advances in STEM, the mean rating was at 4.07, just a little bit lower. The other items, we had a mean rating at 3.49. Thank you. The questions for returning attendees were also used very frequently by festivals. In year 1, we had about 31% of attendees surveyed had said they had been to the festival in the past. So here you'll see the number that we report for year 2 is fairly consistent. At this point, we can't say if that's an increase or if we're going to see this number continue to hover around the 1/3 mark. We submitted some of these results to Ben and Julie to include in their SFA report this year. One of the ways that we might start thinking about these data has to do with the fact that festivals and other informal science events are criticized for serving the choir. If 1/3 of our attendees are returning each year, then that means that 2/3 are actually new each year. So when you think about that from one year to the next, that's an awfully big choir. Here's another way to think about it, and it's how that information was presented in an SFA report. Here you see the percentage of new and returning attendees that has been consistent across the 2 years of data collection to date. But that indicates that festivals are reaching a core base of attendees, but also expanding to new audiences each year. We also took a look at the ratings to see if those differ for returning and first-time attendees. And here you can see they're equally high for both groups. Just to talk a little bit about these, the overall rating, which is the set of bars at the bottom, you'll see that the difference between first-time attendees and returning attendees was negligible. We're talking 100%. And same thing for learning, and the values for fun are not showing up for me. Oh, here we are. I'm looking at a different screen. So again, same kind of thing, very negligible differences. So the questions for returning attendees, we dug into those a little bit more. And if you'll remember, we had asked folks about their returning attendees, those folks. We asked them about kind of what they did when they left the festival, how they followed up on their festival experience. So the previous slide was just giving you impressions from the day of the festival. This is thinking a little bit more about the longer-term impact that the festival has on festival goers. So here you can see that folks are following up on their festival experience in a variety of ways. We asked about whether they discussed a festival topic or looked for new information or looked for another activity related to a festival topic. And we're showing the ranges again here too, so you can see that these are fairly broad, but in 2 of the 3 cases, at least half of the returning attendees have followed up on the festival experience in each of the 3 ways, so that's fantastic. And we'll show that in just a little different of a way here. Here we see the percentage of returning attendees who extended their experience by looking for more information or doing another activity related to a festival topic. And of course this occurs after the festival, after their attendance. And we're looking at 81% there, so 8 out of 10 returning attendees followed up in some kind of way after leaving. So we are now at another one of those points where we can open up the floor for any clarifying questions, any additional interpretations or thoughts you would like to share. If you think there's anything we missed, any suggestions you may have for what we analyze next, or just general commentary at this point. Okay, somebody double check for me that we don't have questions or anything.
I don't see any hands raised. Taylor, do you have anything in the chat?
Nope, I don't.
Okay.
Gina said useful analysis, thanks, and Victor said glad to see our information is similar to the report you've shared.
Okay.
Cool.
Great.
Okay. So I am going to keep on keeping on then. So you guys will probably remember that at the June meeting, we started to look across different kinds of ratings. So we looked at how kids' ratings on one topic related to their ratings on another. We looked at how adults' ratings on one topic related to their ratings on another. And then we started to look across those 2 groups as well. And so we're using just a basic correlation analysis to do that. If you are somebody who doesn't think about statistics on a regular basis, then what I want to say is that we are dealing with positive correlations in our data because as ratings in one area tend to go up, ratings in the other area tend to go up as well. And so to start looking at these are just sort of reminders from the summer. The first thing that we looked at was just at how adults' ratings related across some of the core items. And so you guys have seen this display before. What we're showing across the bottom is adult learning, and that is increasing. As ratings for learning increase, so do their ratings for fun at the festival, and so do their overall ratings at the festival. Correlations, the R statistic that you see here ranges from 0 to 1. The closer it gets to 1, the stronger the relation between those two items. So you can see that we have a stronger relation between the rating for learning and the rating for fun than we do between the rating for learning and the overall rating, although both of those correlations are considered in the moderate range. What you don't see here is the relation between fun and the overall rating itself. And we actually used those data last year to make the decision that the fun item was not going to be required starting in 2016. The correlation between fun and the overall rating is around the 0.3 range, and so it's in between the two that you see here. So overall, we've got moderate and positive relations between the core items that use that 5-point rating scale for the grown-ups. And then if you look at the kid ratings, we have fewer data to work with here. We really only have 2 rating questions from the kids, but they also look at learning and fun. So you see learning across the bottom here. As ratings for learning increase, so do the ratings of how much fun the kid reports having at the event. And again, that 0.31 puts that correlation in the moderate range. And then we looked at kids and adults together. And so you'll see that we've changed what is being shown in this graphic across the bottom on these slides. It's now fun instead of learning, and I'll come back to that in a second. And we're looking at specifically the kids' rating of how much fun they had at the festival. And that rating is positively correlated to how much fun their grown-ups had at the festival. If you've been out and about with a child lately, you'll probably understand that that makes good intuitive sense. So the more fun that a kid reports having, the more fun an adult reports having. And then the same is true for how much fun a kid reported having and their grown-ups overall rating of the festival. What's interesting to me about that statistic is that if we look across all of the correlations we have, this is the strongest one. So the 0.50 is pretty much on the borderline between what's the traditional cutoff for a moderate versus a strong or high correlation. And so it's interesting that for parents who come, it seems that the extent to which the kid had fun or that they had fun together may be playing largely into the overall rating that they provide for that experience. All right, we're going to shift gears now and talk a little bit about some of the economic impact data that we've collected, and we really just skim the surface on the attendee survey when it comes to economic impact, but we have a pair of items that many festivals have included. The first of those looks at whether people plan to spend any money either dining out or shopping in the local area before or after the festival event. And you can see that the majority of attendees report that they are going to do that. Many festivals then ask a follow-up question that says, okay, if you were going to spend money, how much are you going to spend? And you can see the breakdown across ranges here for how much spending is happening. About 2/3 of attendees report that they're going to spend up to $50 in the local area, and that's sort of evenly split between people who are going to spend $25 or less or $26 or more. And then we've got about 1/3 of our attendees who report that they're going to spend $50 or more in the local area as a result of the festival. One of the things for me that has been, I think, the most interesting and helpful and fruitful of the analysis that we've been able to do over the last year is actually not the core questions. It's the questions like these that I chose not to include on my survey for North Carolina, but that other people did use. And the nice thing about that for me is that we have enough data from those other sources that I can still learn about what's going on across the festival community, even if I didn't necessarily include those items on my survey. And so this is a great example of that, I think, for me. For me, it's very cool to know that this is happening for people. We used these data years and years ago, and so there's a nice opportunity, even if you've only asked a question once and it was years in the past, to think about what your results were like then, to what people are seeing now, or to decide to think about whether these data might apply to your context, even if you didn't ask, even if you've never asked the question. So thanks to those of you who included these items. All right, I'm going to stop there for another set of questions, and then we're going to shift gears and start looking ahead to the rest of the year up until we get to Madison. So anybody with a question or a comment in the chat?
Karen, this is Catherine. With the with the economic data, the amount of money that people said they would be spending, is that per person or for their group?
It's for the group.
Okay.
Anybody else? Looks like a no. Okay. I suspect we will have more time at the end, so if something comes to mind, then jot it down and we will maybe circle back. So as I said, we wanted to spend a little bit of time today looking ahead, and we may have some time for discussion about one of these topics as well, which I think could be kind of exciting and cool. So we wanted to talk about what EvalFest will be up to and give you the schedule from now until we are together in June, particularly because there's a change, and we want to talk about that in a little bit of detail. So if we think about the road from here to Madison, we will have a webinar on March 16th that will have Denise Young back with us. She's going to talk about a social network analysis that we published last year that looks at the role that festivals can play in sort of a STEM ecosystem. So thinking about, well, contextualizing it in the STEM ecosystem literature, but then thinking about how festivals help to broker relationships and sustain relationships between the outreach network and a local community. So we'll be excited to have Denise back next month. Then in April, Robert Ty is going to be talking with us. Robert is one of our board members, and if you do any work in the K-12 arena, he is probably a name that you know. He's, I think, probably one of the most prolific education researchers in the community today. And he's done a fair bit of work on the kinds of experiences that seem to matter to people who end up becoming scientists. And so some retrospective work, some prospective work. He's going to talk to us about a project that he has that's called Focus and some of the data collection that they've done there. And all of that is going to be done in the service of helping us think about the kinds of festival impacts that are appropriate and not appropriate to expect. And so helping to think through what we can expect short and longer term impacts to look like from a festival experience. So that'll be exciting to have Rob with us on April 20th. Then this is the change. So May 4th is not a regularly scheduled webinar date. And so we're hoping that it's still going to work for people's calendars. We are going to do sort of an EvalFest Shark Tank. And so the presenter for this could be you. And in a lot of cases, we're hoping that it will be you. We have, we're still sort of in the process of thinking through and responding to the recommendations that you all made when we met in, I think it was November, that we did the affinity group discussions that focused on the mini grants and how to boost participation in the mini grant program this year. And one of those recommendations was to use one of the webinars to really get some ideas on the table, to talk through those, and then to do a little prep work before we're together in June. And so we are going to try to do that. We are also going to try to have 2 submission dates this year for mini grants. And so we will hope to announce what those will be very soon, but just so you know, we are thinking that there will be 2 opportunities to submit a mini grant. And the purpose of the conversation on the 4th is to really start to get those ideas out there so that people can connect with one another early and often, if possible, between May and June, so that we can leave the June meeting with some good, serious, concrete ideas about how we're going to proceed with applying for mini grants for one of those 2 deadlines. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a second. Then just a quick reminder that IPSEC this year is on June 5th and 6th. It is in Madison. We will be covering your travel arrangements for the 6th and the 7th as part of EvalFest. We are hoping that everyone will be there for at least the second half of the day on the 6th. There will be some sessions that we hope will be required sessions for EvalFest to attend that are part of the regular IPSEC program. So we're trying to sort of double down on some of those opportunities so that everyone can attend IPSEC, experience what that's like if you haven't had the chance to do that already, but also be gaining some of the content that we think will feed into the programming that we offer that evening. And then when we're together on the 7th is a 1-day EvalFest community meeting, and we hope to see you all there for that. I'm going to stop there for just a quick second. Does anybody have any questions about the schedule that's coming down the pike, or anything else that we haven't already covered? Okay. So the last thing I wanted to talk about is a little bit of an announcement. It is a throwback to some of the conversations that seem to have the most energy last year at IPSEC and at the EvalFest meeting, and that we hope will feed into the Shark Tank session and be something that we're all excited to think about. I will say that if you're not excited about this, or if you if you have other feedback to share, put that in the chat so that we know. But if you will remember back to last summer, there was a conversation that started during an IPSEC session and then continued into the mini grant sessions of the EvalFest meeting that focused on a confessional booth. And this idea of gathering science confessions from people, and what would that be like, and does it have an evaluation purpose or not? And then soon after the meeting, Denise sent the people who were part of that working group, oh, boo, my last pictures aren't in here. Hang on. Let me show you what I want you to maybe see. Here we go. Which is this, which is a truth booth. So this is a thing that actually already exists in the world. If you don't know about this thing, it is pretty darn cool. You can learn about it at, I think it's The Cause Collective is maybe the group that's doing this. They have taken this truth booth all around the world, and it is sort of an artistic installation. It is also an ethnographic study, and people walk into this truth booth. This one includes video and audio. Ours will not. But you walk into the truth booth and you answer a prompt, and everybody answers the same very simple prompt. The prompt they use is, "The truth is." And then people get up to 2 minutes to talk. And people have shared remarkable things. If you want to learn and see this thing in action, you can check it out just by doing a site for the truth, a search for the Truth Booth and Cause Collective. They post their videos online, so everybody who goes in knows that there's a chance that their video and audio is going to be seen by the world. And this is, we think, the best living example of the idea that we all sort of shopped around and talked about when we were together last June. So what we're going to try to do here with part of the evaluation budget for EvalFest this year is pilot test this for festival purposes. So it turns out that the Moorhead Planetarium has a backup portable planetarium that looks sort of like this one. We don't know these people. This is some random picture from the web. So if you're trying to figure out if you've ever seen these folks before, you probably haven't. We are going to use the portable planetarium as our truth booth, and we have a few different prompts that we're hoping to test out. One of them is the thing about science is, and so people will respond to that. The others that we're tossing around are when it comes to science, the truth is, and then there's a double prompt that is science can and science cannot. And so the idea is that we would decorate our portable planetarium in proper fashion so that it says truth on it, and that people would go in both at large public events that are part of our festival, but then other large public events that are not science-based. And so this is sort of how we're thinking that we might be able to justify this as a data collection strategy instead of something that we just think is kind of snazzy and fun. So the idea is that we will take the truth booth to different venues and see what we can learn about the people who come to science festivals and the people who come to science events. And so those of you who have a Just Add Science or a Sneaky Science kind of a program, you may be able to sort of replicate that. We're also really just interested in exploring whether and how this works for festivals as an evaluation tool. And so have decided to spend some effort and energy on that this year with the hope that if it works, and we think it has some viability to it, that we can present that as part of the Shark Tank in May, and then the community can decide whether to sort of run with it and how, and that may be one of the things that moves forward in the coming years. So the last thing I want to say, I guess, in relation to the Shark Tank idea, so I have to admit I've never seen a full episode of Shark Tank, but I get the sense that people are not generally as kind on that show as I would expect that we will be with each other. So the idea of the May session will be for you guys to self-nominate and to let us know that you have an idea that you want to pitch to the community. And you will have a chance to do that. Everyone will have sort of a consistent presentation of, maybe 4 slides that we ask you to put together so that you pitch your idea, why you think it's important, who you're looking to partner with, and other key characteristics. And then we will begin to gather feedback and hopefully begin to build some momentum around some of those ideas so that we can continue to chip away at those between May 4th and when we're together and really digging into stuff for part of our time together on June 7th. So that is the game plan. That's where we want to go. I'm going to open the floor again for any questions or comments or questions. I may have said questions twice about either the truth booth and what you think about that as an idea, or about the Shark Tank session that we'll hope to do in May and how you might contribute to that.
Hey Karen, it's Taylor. Gina had a comment that a possible question for the truth booth could be, what I'd like to know about science is.
Awesome. Thank you.
And Jen says she's having technical difficulties, so she doesn't have a mic at the moment.
All right. I don't think we have any additional questions that I see coming through. So we will end early, I think, today. I wanted to say thank you to Jen and to Catherine for presenting today and being part of the crew. Thanks again to Taylor. Gina, you got a shout out earlier for sticking in there and hanging out with us and trying to figure out what's going on with your survey, and so thank you for that now that you're on the line and can hear that. For the rest of you, have a great month. We will hope to see you back here in March for the social network analysis report out that we'll have from Denise Young. Thanks, everybody.
Hi, everyone.